Started. I'm assuming we're recording and live streaming. Fantastic, thank you. Hello, welcome to our regular council meeting. The meeting itself is both in person and being live streamed. And will be available on the Township YouTube channel. Before we dig in, just to call the roll, we have Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Vervoort.
Present.
Councillor Johnston.
Present.
And myself, Heather Watson. And of course, Deputy Mayor Nelson has sent regrets today. On the staff side of the bench, we have our acting clerk, Martina Cheat-Hartwright. Hello. Our CIO, Lena Arthurs. Our treasurer, Paul Kramer. Our interim acting chief building official, temporary building official, Don Hellman. Hello. So with a quorum in attendance, I will call the meeting to order. I will now read the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi-Sagig and Ishibek. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And now I ask that we pause for a moment of silent reflection. Okay, moving on, maybe just a point. Oh, I get you getting close to one. No, I was already.
I closed one, but I didn't do the second.
Oh, okay. I see that Councillor Watt and the crew are.
We were pretty bright.
Yeah, pretty bright. Although the sun is welcome. The sun is welcome. Thank you for that, Martina. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing nothing, could I please get an adoption of the agenda? Councillor Watt, seconded by Councillor Vervoort. All in favor? And that motion carries. Before us, we have the regular council meeting minutes from February 21st. Assuming you've all had an opportunity to review those, could I please get a motion to receive and approve those? Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor Watt. All in favor? And that also carries. On the agenda, we have one item for consent, and that's the municipal appraisal forms. So assuming no one wants to hold that item for discussion, could I please get a motion to receive and approve that, please? Councillor Vervoort, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that also carries. We have no delegations, petitions, presentations. So moving on to item 9, our report and capital project status, 9.1 for March. Does council have any questions of staff on the report? Seeing nothing. Do we get a motion to receive that? Councillor Vervoort, seconded by Councillor Johnston. All in favor? And that carries. On to item 9.2, Mr. Hellman, our building department, customer service policy. Over to you, sir.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the council had the chance to read the report. I think that I would just like to draw attention to the idea that what our policy is trying to get in place is accountability for our department to the customer, making sure that the communication is forthcoming and frequent with them. And I think that really gets brought out in the procedure more than in the policy, which you've received as well. And rather than go through it as you've all read it, probably the one big thing that I feel might separate us from some of the additional staff in our township is the requirement to complete reviews and some research on some of the topics, as well as our staff is frequently out of the office. And that's why we've asked for a little bit of elongated response time, is if we do have staff out of the office, having them respond that same day could be challenging for them if they're completing inspections, or also if the staff in the office is required to check in with them. And so because of that, that's where we've asked for that 2-day acknowledgement window rather than the same day. That's probably the most that I'd like to draw your attention to. And then after that, it's just that we continue to communicate with them. So we make that initial acknowledgement. That'll never be, we'll never get away from that. How and when we respond to the inquiries will be determined a little bit on how much investigation we have to do based on that. And that's really the basis of the procedure. If there's any specific questions to the procedure, I'm happy to answer, but that's kind of where most of that comes from and the ideology behind it.
Thank you for that. Over to council for questions. Councillor Watt.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much for this. Very comprehensive. I really was happy to see everything in there. I was also happy to see the fact that you give yourself some leeway because you don't know what's going to come up in a specific job, or in a specific piece of information put into you. So you haven't tied your hands to specific things. What I really like is the fact that you're going to get back to them right away, but there's also the follow-up, because I think that's what we lacked before. Like, there was lots of times, okay, somebody got talked to Monday, but then 3 weeks later, I haven't heard anything back, and that was just not acceptable. So very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair. Now, when you say you give them 24 hours and you get back to them, if you got a call and someone was available and it was close by, could someone still go?
Absolutely.
Or are you making it hard fast then?
No, maybe two different things that are happening there, but in the procedure, it also says that though we have a timeline, it's our maximum that we would hit. We're happy to respond to any inquiry as fast as we can. So we definitely wouldn't be creating a delayed response, but it's just if we can't get there, we can't respond to them. So the 2-day acknowledgement has more to do with kind of email requests, written requests or phone calls that we receive. Inspections still fall, they have till noon the day prior to notify us. But yeah, we're here to serve the public, and we want to get there. This just allows us to make sure that we can meet that without falling short when we're in our busy times, when we are busy, and that's really what we're here to do. The other thing, if I can, is it helps staff just also set a deadline for themselves so that we kind of know what's expected of ourselves and staff.
Any other questions from the council? I just have a couple of questions. So we're here to serve the public. I love to hear that. Thank you. In terms of serving the public, when those inquiries come in, how are you handling them? Like, are they coming into like a central individual and it's being kind of triaged, and I'm looking at I guess this is the procedure, not the policy, where it breaks down the non-technical and technical and highly technical, like how, just from a workflow standpoint, how are you processing that? What can people expect in terms of who's following up with them and the determination of those key areas?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. So most of our inquiries, we try to push the public first to our building department administrator, and then leave it up to that staff member to assign it to the staff who's potentially either best suited for it, has the space to be able to get back to that. They monitor a little bit more on the workflow. If a customer has been in communication with a specific person, then we don't, that's fine, they can continue that communication. So it is a little bit customer driven to that fact that if there's someone that they wish to speak to or they've been dealing with, then they can ask for that person, they'll get put through to that person. If not, general inquiries, or if they don't know who to talk to, we push them to the building department administrator. And then, as is covered in the procedure, is if that message gets handed off, we are informing the public that this is what we've done. So we've received it, whether it's written or verbal. We've received it, and this is who we've passed you off to. So now they know if they need to follow up, or if they wish to, they can contact the administrator, or they also know who they've been handed to. They could contact them directly as well. Did that answer the question? It
does, but just a quick follow-up question, Don. The handoff, I'm assuming, whether it's written, the inquiry comes in writing or over the phone, as just basic customer service stuff. Will the public have to reiterate their concerns, so whatever the reason is that their call is, or is the administrator, if it's an email, it's easy, we're just forwarding that email off, but is there some sort of backstory that's also communicated, or will the customer have to come back and say, well, as I was telling your administrator, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's an important piece, because we all hate repeating ourselves with the same issue, telling the story to the next level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that it's maybe a little bit more scenario driven. If it was to a staff member outside of the building department, we are asking that they just direct to the building department administrator. so that the person doesn't have to kind of go back through it. If it's got to the building department, if it's handed off to a building official or another staff, there may be follow-up questions we may ask, but we definitely would be including what the general nature of the inquiry was about. That's not to say that the next person in line may not have some follow-up questions and want to get some more clarity, just to make sure. Sometimes if you're playing telephone, right, if the message gets a little, relayed a little differently than what was intended. So it still could happen, but absolutely we're giving as much information as we can to the next person. And it's not to bore you with all the details, but we put in some great workflow where we're creating summary sheets and stuff like that, so that people can pick up that next file and understand kind of what has transpired to get to this point. And hopefully stop the need to go back and kind of hear the story all over again.
Great, thank you for that. Well, council, what would you like to do on this? A motion to receive and approve? Or remove the recommendation that's in the report? Yep. So the recommendation that's before us, Councillor, I just want to be clear that the building department is received and the policy and procedure is added to the policy manual. Is that the motion that you're making, Councillor Johnson? Yep. Second, Councillor Watt, all in favor? And that motion carries. Moving on to item 9.3, Indicom Drive Lot 3 update, Public Works. Johanna.
Through you, Mayor Watson, to the rest of council. I'm going to speak to this just because we're going to make a small modification to our recommendation this evening, so I told Jake I would handle it tonight. We have done a little more digging into the file, and it appears that there is some additional information and some topographic surveys that were completed. It is some time ago, so I'm not sure whether or not they will be relevant, but we're hoping that we can go back and maybe take another look at what is required and bring this back to council. So the information is there. We do have to, take a look at the fill and the amount of fill that is there, and we could possibly come back with a very similar report, but we would just like some additional time to do a little more digging just to see if we can't find some savings or some other efficiencies.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, no motion is needed? We're just, it's just on the agenda?
Yes, we will bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor Johnson?
to the chair, I guess I got a big question as to what happened there. Like, I was on council when they said we could put it there, and I mean, they thought that was the greatest thing and a win-win-win for all kind of thing. I guess my question is, who was patrolling it? Like, to say that how much we can put there and all this kind of stuff. Like, when I see this, it's just shocking to see that the cost, what it is, maybe to move the stuff that we just put there, to move it. Like, what happened? Like, do you know what happened?
Through Mayor Watson to Councillor Johnson, I wasn't here. Unfortunately, the parties that were involved aren't here at the municipality, and there's been changeover at Orca as well. So the information that was received shortly after I started here was just there was additional fill over and above the permitted amount within the Orca permit that was provided. We've gone through to try to see if there's any correspondence there where there's back and forth about the amount of fill or the location. There is some reference to some fill, and then there was some other fill placed at another location within the property. So at this stage, I only have what I've been provided from Orca, and the indication today is that there is fill over and above what was permitted. And the concern now is to be able to remove that fill, which we can, and that's not necessarily an issue. It's just where we have to stage to be able to remove the fill without impacting the wetland that is there, and then the stability of the slope when the material is moved. So the survey is a big part of that, I think, and I want to just take the time to go back and take a look at what we have and potentially have some conversations about what that survey will look like, what the expectation is, how much that's going to change. I'm not an engineer, so I'm trying to do a little more digging just to sort of get an idea of the information that we have, and if it's changed that dramatically, or if those previous surveys are relevant and just need some modifications.
So as far as you know, they're going off a survey that they must have gave us or something.
So
some guidelines that say we can put some fill in.
And the survey that I have is prior to the fill being put there. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly how much that is going to change based on where the fill is located and what we're being told today with the requirement for a survey, and then going back and that slope stability. So it's sort of all tied together, and I just don't want to put the cart before the horse and get too far ahead of ourselves until I can take another look at what we currently have and if there's how much of an impact the change has made.
So, we've got this fill there, and when they survey, they must go by the height of it or something, like to know, like how do they know how much we put in there? These are the kind of questions I've got, because when we were doing it, we must have supervised it a bit, and then the county came along and threw some more stuff in there, and all of a sudden, like, who knew when to stop, or we should have known when to stop, or whatever. I just find it very disturbing when I see the cost it's going to take. And can we move that fill that we gotta move, can we move it on somewhere else on the property?
Through Mayor Watson to Councillor Johnston. Again, that's a conversation that we've had, and it all depends on the impact in the wetland. So right now, the intent and the early discussions we've had is to be able to move the fill to another location on the property. But again, we have to make sure that we can do that, and that survey is part and parcel to that information, to make sure that we're not going to impact the wetland, and we're not going to further compromise the slope if we move the material to another location on the site. So it's, I think.
So Orca is in that Orca's hand now and come back and say, this is what we want?
So Orca has more or less said what they want from us to be able to become compliant. Now we're just looking at our path to get there. And I think, like I said, I think that survey is a big part of it. There's lots of discussion about the amount of fill and who brought fill in and when it was brought in. So there might be some further discussions with Orca as well about what transpired during the change in staffing. Most of the material that I have is from Orca staff that was there that is no longer there. So there might be some further discussions there as well.
Well, it's really a shame, because at the time it was a win-win. That we were getting this fill, building up the 8th line and or the 9th line, and then doing all this and the bonus, getting it from Trent there so close and everything. And I see this, and it's just unbelievable.
Disheartening indeed. Councillor Watt?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So for tonight, would you like, or maybe it's a done deal, whatever, us to approve the topographic survey, the slope stability grading plan, and then come back with the balance later? Is that kind of what you're looking for tonight?
Through Mayor Watson to Councillor Watt, I think at this stage we'll just hold off and we'll bring it back.
Everything?
There's no immediate rush.
Okay.
Nobody's going to do anything until the snow is melted and done anyway. Jake and I had the conversation about bringing it back. It had been some time. We did come to council and request that there was funds put aside to do the slope stability study, which was not because of this at that time, but over the course of time, the situation has just changed. So I think we would just like to take some additional time.
For now?
Sure, right, yeah, if you want to make a motion to
I will
defer
make a
that.
motion to defer it till staff has time to come up with some more resources for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Watt, Councillor Gort, seconding that. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. We'll wait for more information on that. On to committee minutes and other reports. We have our committee of the whole minutes from February 14th. Can I get a motion on those, please? Councillor Gort, seconded. Councillor Watt, all in favor? And that motion carries. Moving right along under correspondence, action items 11.1, we have a letter from the Regional Municipality of Niagara on homelessness, mental health, and opioid addiction. What would you like to do, Councillor?
I'd like to receive it and support it anyway, as far as what they're doing and saying is so true, on the homeless too.
Okay, a motion to receive and support. Is somebody going to second that? Councillor Watt? All in favor? And that carries. We have no bylaws. We have no reports from notices of motion. No notices of motion. Council, I'm assuming no. Any announcements? No, pretty quiet. Okay, so on that then, we are going to be moving into closed session. Folks, thanks for sticking around, but we're going to have to kick folks out for a bit. You're welcome to wait outside of the chambers for when we come back, but I don't know if there's anything left on the agenda for that. While everyone's pulling up their reports, we want a motion to move into closed session. Councilor Report. Seconded by Councilor Johnson. All in favor? And that carries. No, I thought you were like kicking back, you're like,
That was tomorrow there.
Will they hear, give the sentence?
they were just